Which planet comes to mind first when it comes to colonizing celestial bodies? Whose face immediately comes to mind? Naturally, it's dusty Mars and the legendary Musk. We probably know more about the red planet than about any of our other neighbors. However, not everything. Recently, the European Space Agency published a photo that clearly shows colonies of Martian spiders. Here appears to be the answer to whether there is life on Mars. But that's not all the news yet. Recent studies show that there is water on the red planet, but not at all where we expected. So what is the mysterious Mars still hiding from us? The planet named after the god of war, the fourth from our parent star, belongs to the terrestrial group of celestial bodies. This means that Mars is made up of solid rocks, and its internal structure is similar to Earth's. At the center is a core, and it also has a mantle and a crust. The question arises, if Mars is so similar to Earth, why aren't we on Mars yet? Unfortunately, that's pretty much where the similarities end. If you look at it objectively, Mars isn't a very comfortable environment for humans, even in a modern spacesuit. The pressure on its surface is 160 times lower than on Earth because of the extremely thin atmosphere. The average temperature is minus 63 degrees Celsius, and there are almost constant dust storms raging there. Some storms can cover the sky with an impenetrable veil for half a year or even longer. Nevertheless, the proximity of Mars to Earth has made scientists and futurists consider terraforming and colonizing the planet for many years now. Once again, old Elon comes to mind. Terraforming is a lengthy process that could take centuries or even millennia. After all, it will be necessary to radically change a number of Mars's physical characteristics, increase atmospheric pressure and temperature, create something like an ozone layer to protect against harsh ultraviolet radiation, as well as form the planet's magnetic field and biosphere. Several small details, right? But before apple trees start blooming on Mars, we could at least try to colonize it. The first thing astrobiologists care about is the presence of liquid water. What is it like? The hydrosphere of Mars. What do the latest scientific studies show? Strictly speaking, the Martian water reserves cannot be called a hydrosphere. Due to the low temperatures, water has long since turned into ice harder than stone. That's why astrophysicists call it the cryolithosphere. Based on observations that began in the 19th century, it is clear that there is water on Mars, but very little of it. Most of it is concentrated in the polar caps. Many people draw analogies with Antarctica, saying that such extreme places are formed according to a similar principle. But in August 2024, the scientific world was shaken by sensational news. Scientists found liquid water on Mars for the first time. However, it's not easy to reach. This is truly a breakthrough since all previous research had focused either on the polar caps or on traces of vapor in the Martian atmosphere. How was this sensation discovered? Since 2018, a probe has been operating on Mars. For 4 whole years, it was in a sort of hibernation, carefully listening to the voices of the planet and recording the tremors of the crust. It is precisely its research that indicates that at a depth of 10 to 20 kilometers, there is liquid water hidden, considering the fact that even on Earth, we were only able to drill a shaft just 12 kilometers deep, after which, for reasons not fully understood, we stopped this activity. Hoping for a similar mission on Mars is foolish, at least for now. Was there water on the young surface of Mars, and where did it go? The beds of dried up rivers and lake basins clearly suggest that Mars was not always so dry and waterless. Scientists think much of the water evaporated with the atmosphere millions of years ago, but some life-giving moisture remained underground. By analogy with our groundwater, the probe discovered deposits of liquid at its location. However, this does not mean that similar things are not being detected in other places. What is the scale of these water reserves? According to astronomers' estimates, the underground water could be enough to cover the entire surface of Mars with an ocean 1.5 kilometers deep and turn it into a Miller planet. Does this mean that if water is hidden underground, then the habitats of Martians could also be located there? The planned colonization of Mars is intended to answer this question as well. A significant advantage is also that the soil of the red planet, although dry, is filled with nutrients for growing plants. Matt Damon managed to grow a potato plantation in his module. Why can't we? However, let's get back to Martian water. If the surface of the red planet used to be covered by bodies of water, then they must have affected the geological structure of the celestial body. Simply put, ordinary rocks can tell us a lot about this issue. Let's pay attention to the phyllosilicates that cover much of the surface of Mars. Sheet silicates form exclusively from rocks that have been in prolonged contact with water. This fact can also be considered indirect evidence of Mars's watery past. At one time, the Mars rover repeatedly sent photos of rocks that were clearly affected by water, and it was a real turbulent stream. If we combine these studies with the collection of meteorites that have ever fallen to Earth from Mars, particularly Allen Hill's 8,401, then the thoughts about life on the red planet become more and more distinct. The mentioned meteorite was discovered in Antarctica at the end of December 1884 and was named after the mountains where it was found. Under high magnification, it was discovered that the stone visitor, which left Mars about 15 million years ago, carries the remains of nanobacteria, which we can only imagine in theory for now. Scientists unanimously claim that meteorite 8401 comes from the era of the so-called wet Mars. But recently, a new name was added to the stone chronicle of the red planet. The fact is that on September 25, 2024, the Mars rover discovered something extremely strange. What was it? The rover wasn't called Perseverance for nothing. Even though it moves at a turtle's pace, it has already covered 40 kilometers across the rugged Martian terrain. And all of this since 2021. Right now, the rover is inside the Jezero impact crater, which is 49 kilometers in diameter. As the name suggests, it's believed to be a former lake basin about 2.5 kilometers deep. That's exactly where Perseverance was sent. The probe has been searching for ancient rocks at the bottom and slopes of this crater for 3 years now. And finally, it has found something interesting. It's a rock with an unusual texture, resembling a zebra or light marble. It has already been named Freya's Castle, after the Norse goddess of love, a resident of the heavenly city of Asgard. But what's so amazing about it? Isn't it just another boring rock? No, because this 20-centimeter stone is absolutely unique. Nothing like it has been found on the surface of Mars in any of its locations. So far, the rover has transmitted rather scant information about the composition of this artifact, but it's obvious that the stone is loose and different from the rock typical for this crater. That is, it's quite possible that it was brought here, for example, by a stream of water, or the stone simply rolled here from another part of the planet. In any case, the discovery has sparked increased interest among the astronomical community, so research is ongoing. What is your opinion about the news of spiders on the surface of the red planet? In April 2024, some frightening images were published on the website. They were taken by the Trace Gas Orbiter and Mars Express probes. The images show entire colonies of huge black spiders, judging by their size and the distance from which the photos were taken. A massive gathering of insects was localized in the city of the Inca, a Martian location that visually resembles the earthly counterpart of an ancient polis located in the mountains of Peru. This amazing place was once discovered by the Mariner 9 probe. It's absolutely unclear how these geometrically perfect linear ridges could have formed. There is a theory that Martian dunes have petrified over time. Whatever created this location, black spiders in countless numbers have gathered here. in an area about 86 kilometers in diameter. Putting aside their panic, scientists began to study the images and then calmed down a bit. It turned out that the resemblance to spiders was purely visual. In reality, these are peculiar geysers caused by climate changes on Mars. In winter, carbon dioxide from the atmosphere partially freezes and accumulates as dry ice. When the spring sunlight, remember the images were taken at the end of April, illuminates these accumulations, the ice begins to melt, turns into a gas, and bursts to the surface in the form of fountains. But why are these geysers black? Along with the ice, dark material from beneath the Martian crust comes to the surface. As a result, black spider-like patterns are formed, each up to 1 kilometer in diameter. But looking at these images, it's still impossible to shake the thought that swarms of disgusting spiders are crawling on the surface of Mars. The red planet is an object of interest that will never fade as long as intelligent human civilization exists. For example, the creation of a transport ship to Mars has been planned for several years now. The launch has been initiated by the company since 2016, but the project is still in the development stage. In 2030, the Chinese are planning to launch the second automatic interplanetary station, Tianwen-3. One with a similar name is already operating successfully on Mars. And the cherry on top is a manned flight to the red planet. Since the 1950s, several projects have been developed to send a crewed spacecraft to Mars. Since 2010, the 100-year Starship mission has been in development, which involves sending colonists on a one-way trip to the red planet. Why a one-way trip? The reason is simple. It's much cheaper that way. Even without a return trip, the expedition will still cost $750 billion. The landing is planned in locations where artificial objects have previously landed successfully. So, what do we have if we sum up all the findings, discoveries, and research related to our rusty neighbor? Mars is often figuratively called the planet of past life, subtly hinting that millions of years ago rivers flowed on its surface, seas surged, vegetation thrived, and perhaps representatives of an intelligent civilization lived there. Bradbury's The Martian Chronicles isn't far from reality. Mars is currently inhospitable to Earthlings. Planet-wide dust storms with wind speeds up to 100 meters per second, no water on the surface, a thin atmosphere, extremely low pressure, and fine-grained soil. In a short time, these conditions would disable any Earth equipment or modules if they were ever set up on Mars. But still, it's one of the most promising options in our surroundings. It's not like we're going to fly to Jupiter. The Hubble channel is taking bets on what the next discovery on Mars will be, and whether a manned mission will head to the red planet anytime soon. Go to the comments. Well, Earthlings, this isn't the end of the video. Ahead of us are still some very interesting and simply spectacular episodes. But for me to keep delighting you with all the characters of the universe, I need your feedback. You can express it quite simply. All you need to do is give an electronic like under this video, because we simply don't have any other likes. And continue the phrase, I know. This way, you'll let me know that we're moving in the right direction. Don't switch channels.